Hello, I'm Tiffany, creator of Red Petal Patterns, and this is Basic Knitting for Beginners, Part 2. Today I want to cover where you actually start. In the last video, I gave you a little bit of advice on what kind of needles and what kind of yarn to get, and I'm assuming you now have your supplies ready. And I'm going to show you how to cast on. Casting on is what we call the beginning of your knitting. So when you are looking at the cuff of a sweater, you have an edge. That edge was either where they started and then knitted, or where they knitted and then ended. And the beginning of it is called casting on, and the end is called binding off. It's also called casting off. And there are literally hundreds of ways to do this. I'm going to show you the way that is, I think, the best start, because it starts with a knit stitch. And you will already have the skill of knitting by the time you finish casting on. It doesn't require a long tail. It doesn't require any math. You don't have to use different hand movements. There's nothing extra to learn. You will learn a knit stitch from the beginning. But first, I want to explain what knitting is and why it's different from other yarn crafts, and why we do it the way that it's done. The actual process of knitting is just looping the yarn through itself over and over and over again. So in crochet, you make one loop, and then you make a series of knots, and then some chains, and then another loop and a series of knots, and there's only one live loop at a time. But in knitting, there's multiple live loops. So on my finger right now, I have some. And knitting is going to be taking this long piece of yarn, and you're going to feed it through this loop, and then you're going to feed it through same yarn. You're going to feed it through the next loop, and the next one, and you're going to continue doing that all the way across your row. Is just going along and picking up some yarn into a loop all the way across in previous loops. Now, the thing about knitting is that these are what we call live stitches. If I take my finger out, it will fall apart, because it is just one continuous string that has been pulled up into these holes. And if you don't put something in there to hold it, it will just fall back out of the hole. The second needle is what holds the stitches in place and keeps them from coming out. That is why you're constantly going from one needle to another needle. You're constantly sliding them over, because you pull that long piece up and then put it on another needle. You pull the long piece up and put it on another needle. And that is it. That is all you're doing. That is all knitting is. You will change how that is done, which side of the work you do that on, depending on the stitch you're trying to make, and you will change how many loops you're pulling through, or how many loops you are pulling, how many of your stitches you will pull the loop through at one time, what direction you will do that in, and how many loops you will pull through a stitch. But it will always be just pulling loops all the way across and putting them on a holder, which is your second needle. Because you can knit with your left or right hand, you do not have the need to reverse patterns the way you would in crochet. You do not necessarily ever have to knit from left to right. All knitting patterns are written from right to left. You do not have to go the other direction if you don't want to, because when you knit with the right hand, which is called English, or the left hand, which is called continental. And the difference will be is that one hand will control the yarn and the other hand will control the needle that's picking up the yarn. And depending on how you hold your yarn and how you hold your needles, one hand could do most of the work while the other hand doesn't. And you can split the difference and have both hands working in unison. It's just going to be a matter of which hand you want to do which job. But because you have the flexibility to go with either hand, you do not need to go backwards. I hope that made sense. I'm going to show you everything twice. I'm going to show you using the right hand or the left hand and how different it looks and what you can, some different ways you can hold it that are common. There are other uncommon ways, but I'm not going to focus on that right now because you're a beginner. But I do want you to see that there are different ways to do it, and they're all valid. There is no better, faster way to do it. Just because you did it something else, or just because you're this, or just because you're that, is not a reason. You will find the way that you like to hold it. Another thing is you will need to be able to hold the yarn in your fingers in a way that you can maintain even tension. And tension means how fast or slow the yarn goes through your fingers. So if you are holding that yarn with a death grip and it can't get through there, you're knitting with a tight tension. You don't ever want to do that. That is just as bad as too loose. You want the yarn to flow through, but not so fast that you can't control your stitches. This is achieved by gentle movements of your hand to hold or release the yarn. You do not have to wrap it this way. You can wrap it this way or this way or this way. You can wrap it around your fingers or through your fingers any way you like, as long as you do not do this. For the love of all that is good, this is unsafe and unpractical. Do not do this to your finger. It is just, no, just don't do it. All right, I'm going to get off my soapbox now. You're going to start with a slip knot. And this is a knot very much like a necktie in that you will be able to move it bigger or smaller by pulling on the long tail. This is the short tail, or your tail and your working yarn. You don't want to get those confused. That would be tragic. Holding the yarn double so that there's a loop, you're going to put 2 fingers in, you're going to twist, you're going to reach in with your thumb and finger, and you're going to grab the long end and pull it through. And I'll show you that one more time. Holding the yarn with both tails, your working yarn and your tail here, you're going to put 2 fingers in, or your finger and your thumb pointing up. And I've got the short tail towards me, and the working yarn away from me. You're going to put thumb and a finger in, twist it towards you so that the working yarn is on top and the tail's on bottom. You're going to reach around and grab the working yarn, not the tail, pull it through, and if you grab both ends, you can tighten that up. And you have made a slip knot. Now you can pull the long end and make that knot as small as you need it. And put it on one of your needles. Just like that. You want it loose enough that it will slide easily, but you want it tight enough that if you were to pick it up and shake it, it's not going to move. You pick up your other needle. Again, there's no wrong way to do this. I'm going to show you right-handed and simple, and then right-handed and a little fancier, and then left-handed simple and left-handed a little fancier, as best as I can, since I don't normally knit with my left hand. Now, you can do it without holding the yarn through your fingers. You're going to put your right needle through the hole on the left needle. And you want to go in the back and wrap your yarn around your needle. Now, this is important. You can go over the needle. You can go under the needle. It does not matter as long as you do it the same way every time. So, over the needle or under the needle will not matter. I personally go under, so I'm going to show you that. At this point, you can pinch these two in your fingers and completely let go of the yarn, or you can hold the yarn. But you don't have to hold this one. You're pinching it between your fingers. You're going to wrap around, and this is called throwing because I'm using my whole hand. I'm dropping the yarn and I'm throwing it over or under the needle. Most beginners learn this way because it's hard to juggle 2 needles and yarn. You're going to hold the yarn and the needle together, and now you're going to bring this needle, your left needle, over your right needle this way, and if you pull that down towards the end, you will see that I have wiggled my stuff around too far. Okay, so you're going to go in, make sure that tail is hidden in your other hand so you don't get it mixed up. Okay, so you're going to go around your needle, and you're going to pull your left needle over your right needle, and when you do that, you will see a little collar on your right needle. You're going to work that point all the way up and over the tip of the other needle. So your left needle will go up and over the tip of your right needle and leave this little collar on your right needle. That is your new baby stitch right there. You want to pull that up just a little, and again, with both points away from you, you're going to take your left needle and put it inside that stitch and take your right needle out of that stitch, putting it back on the cast on needle. And now you have 2 stitches. Now I'm going to show you this a little bit smoother. Because you're knitting, you're going to poke away from you. You're going to go in the stitch, you're going to go around the needle, you're going to pull over and through, and now you're going to go away from you again and take that stitch back on. And you're going to do this over and over until you have about 20 to 30 stitches. Now this is more fluid with the yarn in my hand instead of dropping it, but I'll show you again dropping it. So if I drop the yarn, I'll show you again dropping it is the same, is the same motion. And you'll go in and grab it. Boop, 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 boop. There we go. And put it on. This is splitting the yarn. There's a little piece right there that isn't supposed to be there, and you can just take the needle out and try again if that happens. And now I'm going to show you left-handed. Same thing. You're going to go in, hold it, it's the exact same movements, you're just doing the yarn with your left hand. So you're going to go in, around, pull up the collar, and put it on the other hook. And then this is left-handed, holding the yarn in your hand instead of dropping it, which requires more fingers to hold it, but it's still all the exact same movement. If you watch the tip of my needles, I'm still going to go in, around, pull up the collar, and put it on the other hook. Needle, sorry. It's exactly the same, left-handed or right-handed, and that sort of eliminates the need to go from left to right instead of right to left, because you can have either hand carry the burden of the maneuvers. After you have gotten really even with this, because this is going to be the edge of your work. So you want to do this over and over and over again until it is even. Now I would like to point out one small detail, and then this will also be addressed in the next part when we go into an actual knit stitch, is that I have one that is faced the wrong way. So all of my stitches are facing this way, and I've got one that's facing this way. This is why you want to make sure, no matter which hand you use or how you wind the yarn, that it goes in the same direction every time, either over or under, because it will cause a different stitch. Now in the knitting section, I am going to explain what that means and how to deal with it when you come across it. But it's better if you just build consistent movements and not have to watch for the slant of the direction of the stitches. And you keep practicing that, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye.